Question 7 in my 21 questions journal is what surprised me the most in the last 12 months and why? I'm doing a mid-year check-in. I typically reflect and do this privately, but because so much has changed in my life in the last, August, 8 months, I just was like, this is something that I want to do out loud. This is the first question that I'm answering that's under the spiritual area of life. And it's all about what surprised me in the last 12 months. And I have 3 things that surprised me in the last 12 months. And so I'll share what the 3 things are. And then if you want to stick around for the rest of the video to hear sort of my updated reflection, thoughts, feelings about it, feel free. So the number 1 thing that surprised me in the last 12 months, and if you can imagine, this is my answer December of 2023. So it would have been the 12 months prior. Is romantic love is number 1. Number 2, how I manage risk. And number 3, coming home to myself and wanting to go home to my family. So when I was reviewing my answers to this, so we'll start with romantic love. So when I was reviewing my answer to romantic love, one of the things that I kept writing over and over and over was like big, healthy, easy love, big, healthy, easy love. Like I just wrote that like several different times in my journal, and being in a space to actually be able to give and receive love. And this is something that I've shared with my friends in the past is I feel like I have been well loved in many of my relationships, but I haven't always been someone who's loved someone else very well. Not that anybody's ever complained, but I just didn't personally feel like I was loving other people very well. And one of the things that surprised me in the last 12 months was just realizing that I am healthy enough to both receive love and give love. And I think that in previous relationships, I really wasn't healthy enough to receive love. Like there was a lot of healthy love that felt like a threat. And then there was a lot of toxic, unhealthy love that felt like familiar and comfortable. And so when I think about where I was last year coming into this year, realizing that I now can tell the difference between healthy love and unhealthy love. And I also understand that love, the way that people love, it can exist on a spectrum, right? Like so many people are like, oh, this is toxic. Oh, this is abusive. Oh, this is unhealthy. And they mix all of that together, not understanding that like, no, there's a spectrum, right? So we have unhealthy, we have toxic, and we have abusive. And sometimes when we experience unhealthy love, we call it abuse. Or when we experience abuse, we call it unhealthy, or, right? We're not labeling it properly. And because we're not labeling it properly, we don't actually know what to do when we're in those situations. But then also on the other side of the spectrum, experiencing a healthy love, let me say me. So me, when I was in a space of being unhealthy and unhealed, when I was experiencing unhealthy or toxic love, I don't think any of the love I experienced rose to the occasion of abuse, but I do think some of the love that I experienced was unhealthy and toxic. But when I was experiencing that, because I was so unhealed and still very much in the thick of my trauma, I wasn't even able to recognize that, right? And so I stayed in situations that I should have left. And in the 12 months of 2023, when I think about being able to experience a healthy love and being able to make decisions from a healthy place, right? Because it wasn't like just because the love is healthy, there's no arguments, there's no disagreements, there's no conflict, there's no issue. It's like, no, there is, but how that's resolved, how that's dealt with is completely different than when in an unhealthy or toxic relationship. So that really surprised me, was just realizing that and this is romantically, yes, because I think I had healed enough to experience it at a friendship level and healed enough to experience it in professional relationships, but it was that romantic dynamic that was still lacking for me. And I'm just so super grateful that I got to experience like that big, passionate, super healthy, unconditional, fulfilling, sexy, just wonderful love. The second thing is, let me say that. So fast forward to now, and me thinking about the fruit of that, obviously, is now me being engaged and me being pregnant and me being and feeling very safe and very confident and very fulfilled in those 2 transitions, right? I think I am handling my engagement, I'm handling my pregnancy, I'm handling a lot of the things that would otherwise stress people out if so many things happened all at once, or even me, just, you guys know how I used to be when things would change rapidly. That would be too much. But I think I'm able to handle it very well. And I think I'm in a place, because what I'm experiencing now is just an expansion of what surprised me about last year, was that, like, oh, I have the capacity to give and receive this healthy love. And now it's quadrupled or 10x'd itself in these two big transitions that I'm having in my life. And so I think that this is definitely the fruit of that surprise, which is really exciting. Then the second thing that surprised me is how well I manage risk. And this came up because in 2023, and I talked about this originally on Instagram, that it was one of the harder years for me financially, not from a place of like what I made overall in the year was beautiful, but it was the first year that I experienced delays in getting paid. Like, I've never had downtime between client payments. So it's typical, like, if I when I'm speaking, I get a 50% deposit, and then I get 50% the same day that I deliver the speech, if not the next day. And the only reason why it would be the next day is if maybe instead of giving me a physical check, they sent me an e-check via email or something like that. And that's just for the whole 10 years plus that I've been speaking, there's just never been a delay. And in 2023, I was experiencing 2-week, 3-week, 4-week type delays in either getting deposits or getting my final payment. And it was just unheard of. I think my coaching clients, all of that was coming through fairly regularly, but even on the influencing side, there was a lot more delays. And I was just like, what is happening with these delays? And the delays had got to such a degree that there was about a 3 to 4 month period in 2023 where I had zero income, like none whatsoever. And no income at all is intense and scary and overwhelming. And I was in like really horrible, I was in a really horrible financial situation. And so in me being in that horrible financial situation, there wasn't much I can do, because as an entrepreneur, it's like, if the client doesn't pay, the client doesn't pay. And if this is how I was intending to budget and pay my bills, like, if there's no money, there's no money. But during that time, rather than fold and be like, oh, you know, my business sucks, or I shouldn't be doing this anymore, or let me go find a job, like, my first response to the risk of like waiting on my clients and or waiting for other business investments to finally like turn around and pay me, my response to that was actually to speak to my vendors, speak to my bill collectors, speak to anyone who I was delayed in giving them payment, and just have a conversation with them. And I was blown away at how everyone's response was like, okay, well, let us know when you have it. And I was like, you do know that I'm like 2 months late on this. You do know that I'm like, this is, and they're like, yeah, we understand, but your payment history up until this point has been amazing. So let us know when you'll have the amount. And I remember at the time just being very grateful and feeling very relieved and very happy that that was something that these people were willing to do for me. But it clicked in my mind that I actually handle risk very, very well. I think if there was anyone else who, maybe not anyone else, but I think maybe the average person in that particular financial situation with that many financial balls in the air, with so many unknowns in the air, I think most people would have had a dramatically different response versus, oh, I'm just going to have a conversation with each of these people and see what we can negotiate and see what can be different or what can change. And it surprised me in those 12 months to realize that that is a skill and that is something that's there. So when I think about being an entrepreneur, one of the things that makes me a good entrepreneur is because I manage risk very, very well. I handle it very, very well. Like, don't get me wrong, it sucks and I don't want to be in risky situations, but I do handle it very, very well when they come up. So, and then the last thing is twofold. One, coming home to myself, and I mean that literally and metaphorically. There was like I don't know what the word would be. There was a place in my healing journey, therapeutically, mentally, and emotionally, where I finally really felt grounded, safe, centered, etc., and was like, came home to myself. But in me coming home to myself, there was this deep, overwhelming desire to also go home to my family. And prior to 2023, I hadn't visited my family in 4 years. And for all intents and purposes, I was estranged from a lot of people in my family because I was healing a lot of trauma. And when you're on a trauma healing journey, it is very hard to engage with the people who intentionally or unintentionally cause the trauma. And so my first time not going home was in 2019, and I was just like, and I called everybody in my family, and I was just like, yeah, I don't want to come home for Christmas because I don't want to see you. You hurt my feelings, and you did this, and I don't want to be around that, and I don't want to see that. And it was a very difficult conversation to have in 2019, but I had it. And then in 2020, I couldn't go home because we were in the pandemic. 2021, I could have gone home, but I chose not to go home, right? And so as the years had gone on, there was just always a reason to not go home. And so at the end of 2023, to feel the desire to go home, and it wasn't just that I felt the desire, I also had clarity and awareness and trust in my ability to take care of myself while I was at home. Because the way that my trauma was set up before, it would be so traumatizing for me to go to my hometown that like I wouldn't even tell people when I was there. Like I just didn't want anybody to know that I was there. I would just rent an Airbnb, go pick up my son, bring him to the Airbnb, and basically stay holed up in there for the week, 2 weeks, whatever that I visited with him, and maybe step out a little bit to go see my family. And it would be so traumatizing to go back home that I wouldn't fly. And people would be like, why don't you fly home? Because I'd be like, I get there too fast. I need to take a long time. So I would take the bus or I would take the train. Not because financially it made sense, but because the shock and the pain of arriving in my hometown so quickly from a flight would take me out. And to go from that level of avoidance, that reaction to it, like my skin would break out, like it was just bad all around. To go from that kind of a reaction to my hometown and the people in my hometown, be it friends or family, to actually having a deep desire to go home, mind blowing. And I'm grateful that I did the work prior to going home, the like therapeutic mental and emotional work, because when I did go home, it was what I wanted it to be. It was what I needed it to be. Like the way that I was describing it, I was like, I feel like I was in a Hallmark Christmas movie, and like it was gonna be like a very warm Christmassy day. And I remember me and my sister, we were watching a Hallmark movie, and it was like 3 wishes or something like that. So we were like, let's make 3 wishes. And so one of my wishes was for it to be a white Christmas. And this is like Christmas Eve, and it's like warm outside. There's no snow in sight. And I'm just like, I just want it to be a white Christmas because everybody's going to be here at the house and blah, blah, blah. And I kid you not, I woke up the next day and it was like a snowstorm, and it was like beautiful and all white outside, and my siblings and my nieces and everybody. And it just ended up being this really, 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 really beautiful time. And even before Christmas, I had gone home maybe 2 months earlier than that, or gone back to my hometown 2 months earlier than that, and it was a beautiful time there. And so that really surprised me, because 4 years of not visiting my hometown, 4 years of not seeing my family in person, like yeah, I talked to them, but we were not in contact with each other like that. And so that was really beautiful. And so if I fast forward to now and I think about if everything is unfolding as it should and everything is happening as it should, it makes sense that before I am bringing another human into my family dynamic, before I am like going off and starting a family and getting married and doing these things, it makes sense that I felt led to go back and I wouldn't say heal, but like go back and reconcile the estrangement with my family, because you guys know my family is the most important thing to me in all the land. Like I love those people. Like they're super important to me. And it took a lot to be away that long, given how family oriented I am. But I wouldn't have changed it. It was exactly what I needed to do in order to be able to be as healthy as I am now and in a position to do the things that I'm doing now with my own growing family. So yeah, that's question number 7. What surprised you the most in the last 12 months?